Wait till. Here you go.
Call the meeting to order. Please rise for the flag salute. Councilor Hutchinson, would you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Forrester, are there any additions to the agenda?
Yes, Council President Suppleman, on council presentations, I'd like to add 4B, which will be Kelsey Lucas with EDCO. 4B after the amplified light.
Got it. Thank you. All right. Moving on, the consent,
Yep.
special meeting brief recommendations for the reappointment of planning commissioners and Creekside Beer Garden have all been circulated in the consent agenda. Are there any questions or concerns?
No, I would move to approve the consent agenda as stated.
Second. Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as circulated. Any questions again? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. This point, we have an opportunity for visitors, appearances, and requests to speak to the council. Is there anyone who would like to? And if so, please go to the podium. Tell us what you would like, and we're going to limit it to 3 minutes. Is there anyone online, either by phone or face? No one. Okay. Well, I guess no one wants to speak to us yet tonight. There will be an opportunity at the close of the session also. Moving on, council presentations. Mr. Forrester.
Yeah, so council members, I'd like to make an introduction tonight. And I'll start out with kind of an explanation of what this is going to entail. So as council knows, I've always believed in continuing learning and improvement for our teams, including myself. Part of that is recognizing when outside expertise can strengthen our work. After everything we've navigated this past year, it's clear that a fresh, independent perspective is especially valuable. A strong community vision doesn't just happen. It takes thoughtful conversations, clear organization, and someone skilled in bringing people together. This work helps us understand what our community members value, where they want to see change, and how we should focus our efforts moving forward. To ensure the process is balanced and truly reflective of our community, we brought in some professional visioning consultants. Earlier this year, I engaged Carmen Oling and Jason Curtis, who are with us here tonight, from the Amplified Life Company to provide an objective look at how our leadership, our values, and our role in the community are perceived, as well as how people view Prineville's future and the leadership needed to get us there. With that stated, I'd like to introduce the council and the public tonight to Carmen and Jason from Amplified Life. Yep. Can we get the presentation going, Daryl?
Well, that's okay. I can start talking while we're getting that loaded up. Let me adjust this here. Hi, Council. My name is Carmen Oling. I'm the founder and CEO of the Amplified Life Company, and I'm here with my colleague, Jason Curtis. And we have the privilege tonight to share with you a little bit of the work that we've done with the community and with the city leadership team. So at the Amplified Life Company, we do something a little bit different than standard consulting firms. We do what's called a needs discovery. And so what that looked like for the city of Prineville specifically was Jason and I really taking the opportunity to really understand what makes Prineville, Prineville. So we did things like staying at the Best Western, walking around town, talking to folks, going getting our workouts in at Nord's Gym, buying books at Oliver's Books with Hannah, going to many of the restaurants and coffee shops. In addition to that, we had the opportunity to speak with and do what's called stakeholder interviews. That's our terminology, but we talked with multiple city team members, community partners, and business leaders of the area. And you could think of the stakeholder interviews just as like a community conversation. And in that conversation, we asked a variety of questions and learned some key themes and strengths and opportunities, which we're going to share with you tonight. But to kick things off, I want to share, let me get the clicker going here, our objective of those stakeholder interviews. And that's something that Steve shared with you a little bit ago, but it's really threefold: to understand both the internal and external perception of the city's leadership, its values, and the roles in the community, as well as the opinions regarding the vision and the future for Prineville. And then the third and last thing was what kind of leadership Prineville needs to get us to that future. And so I thought it'd be fun tonight for us to share this in a story format, a format from our perception of what we've learned through these interviews, through reading other articles, looking at history, and you might remember some of this. But again, this is from our perception. And then I'll turn it over to Jason and he'll share more of the formal. So I want to take you back to July 2001. After nearly 20 years, Ochiko Lumber, 51-year-old Dan Viles walked out of the mill for the last time. His wife, Tina, did too. They both lost their jobs that week. Federal aid for retraining was available, but real opportunities in the community seemed almost non-existent to them. A month later, the last operating mill in Prineville shut down. 39-year-old Rick Volkman ended his final shift and sat at the local watering hole with a beer in hand, wondering out loud if maybe Les Schwab or a retraining grant might be his next shot. But he even admitted then, from what I read, that it didn't amount to a whole heck of a lot. The timber economy that had built Prineville, the homes, the schools, the very identity, was almost gone overnight. Unemployment soared to the highest it's ever been at 17.4%. In fact, it was the highest in the state of Oregon. Main Street businesses survived on grit and prayer. People whispered Prineville might just become another mill town remembered by what it used to be. For nearly a decade, Prineville stood at a crossroads. But as you know, the town didn't fold. It reimagined itself. And in 2009, a new city manager, Steve Forrester, stepped in with a builder's mind and a business leader's discipline and helped build the dynamic city team that asked a powerful question. What do we have that the world needs? That answer was land, power, and water, and the courage to use them strategically. By 2010, Facebook broke ground on its first ever custom data center in Prineville. Apple followed soon after. Franchise fees, high-wage jobs, and infrastructure investment began pouring into the city that had once been written off. And then the ripple effect came. The new parks, the improved streets and sidewalks, a debt-free police station, those wetlands that now double as education space, and a population no longer fleeing, but choosing Prineville. What once looked at the end game became a beginning of a whole new identity, a rural city thinking, operating, and leading a high-performing organization. As you know, Prineville's transformation didn't happen by luck. It happened because of leaders like you, the team at the city, and community members that refused to be defined by loss. They chose long-term vision over short-term fear, and it's so exciting as we're here today, that ripple continues. Because when leaders think long-term and communicate like visionaries, confidence, connection, and community naturally follow. But the story isn't finished, and the chapter belongs to all of you, the council, the city team, and the community of Prineville. The ripple effect that started 2 decades ago is still expanding. And together, you can make sure that it reaches every family, every business, and every future generation that calls Prineville home. And I wanted to share that story as a way to celebrate where Prineville's been and the wonderful work of the council, the city, and the community together, and the amazing opportunity and possibility that's ahead. So what we'll do next is we'll turn it over to Jason, who will share a little bit more about those community conversations. And then as time allows, and if there's questions, we'll take some questions.
It was a great honor to work with your city team. I don't know if you realize what a great team that you have. I'll say some more about that as we go along. We asked a lot of questions, open-ended questions, the sort where we wanted people to get talking and sharing. And these were the kinds of questions we asked. Carmen mentioned this one earlier. What makes Prineville Prineville? And that was a great one. It gave us a lot of wonderful information. When you think of the city of Prineville's leadership, what words come to mind? How does the city's leadership show up in conflict or challenge? We thought about the future as well. What kind of leadership is needed to navigate the future for Prineville? Where's that untapped potential? What's the one thing the city could do to build some trust, to build some bridges? And then we used our imaginations. 10 years from now, you meet someone on the street who's visiting. They're considering moving here. What do you hope they will say about your city? And what made that possible? The answers were revealing. We got a lot of wonderful responses, and people enjoyed sharing, and we really enjoyed listening. Here are some of the key themes that emerged for us as a result of these questions. Leadership readiness with a need for clarity. Everything rises and falls on good leadership. And so Prineville is at that pivotal moment where there's a leadership transition down the road, not too far down the road. And so being ready for that and having clarity around it is paramount for you. There is high trust now, but our transparency can even evolve more to build the team and to build the future. One of the themes was everyone talked about the desire around unity for the future, unity in a direction and shared meaning around all of that. I love this one, beautification, that was true to Prineville. There was an identity that made it, that kept Prineville, Prineville, but yet would also attract more than that. So lots of conversations around that, lots of great ideas too. There is a need for cross-boundary collaboration, both with the business community, with the county, maybe others. And then that balance of growth with preserving the hometown spirit. Every time we ask that question, what makes Prineville Prineville? People started sharing their hearts. You know, they stopped kind of giving standard answers and they just sort of told their story, which was wonderful to hear. And it's been an honor to learn about Prineville. I kind of know a little bit more about you. I feel like part of me is here. This morning, I was in Vancouver at an event and I sat next to a Vancouver police officer. And in the course of the conversation, he said that he has family here in Prineville. And I said, I'll be in Prineville tonight. And his eyes got big and they lit up. And he said, we love Prineville. And it felt more like a longing than anything else. And I thought, well, why are you in Vancouver? Go to Prineville. They need people like you. Your strengths. People are very approachable. The city team, very approachable, competent, and deeply relational. Bold, humble. I don't know if you know how unique that is to have humble leadership anywhere, much less in government. You should be very proud of that in an ironic sort of way. I guess I just heard myself say that. Forward-thinking mindset. There's a lot of strong team respect. We laughed a lot with everyone. There's great humor. No one takes themselves too seriously. It was fun to see. Everyone has a seat at the table. We asked a question about, are you heard? If you have a concern, Are you heard? Without a doubt, I can always go to Steve. I can always go to Casey. I can always share my concerns, and they're open to hear it. And then there's an entrepreneurial pace, operates at the speed of business, government that operates at the speed of business. So some great strengths, wonderful strengths. There's some opportunities. Remember, pivotal moment, a transition always presents yourself with an opportunity. So going forward, clarifying those leadership roles and the succession timeline is a real key. And there's a lot of work to do in there, probably mostly internally, where they decide what that needs to look like, the best way to make those transitions. This is very key in any organization, in a city government, even more so. Alignment around a shared long-term vision. Of course, a shared long-term vision doesn't mean everybody's happy all of the time. But it does mean that there is general agreement about where we're heading, and we are unified in that effort. Shift from a reactive to proactive communication, particularly around casting vision and inspiration. We really underplay the value of inspiration when it comes to getting work done in any organization. Carmen has tried to demonstrate that, has modeled that for us, telling those stories that inspire and make us raise our eyebrows just a little bit and get interested and lean in. So we have that opportunity with the city team to be proactive rather than just reactive to what is being said in the community. So building leadership confidence about the transition and around the future, cultural courage not to be swayed in one direction or another, just, seeing which way the wind blows, but to be confident about our direction. And then moving from fear-based decisions to bold execution without running over anyone. So our growth and future vision, these strengths, we have a strategic infrastructure as an economic foundation. Carmen highlighted that, you know that. The right kind of growth was a phrase that emerged on a regular basis. Everyone was saying, we know we need to grow. We know we should grow. We need to think about the right kind of growth. And that rallying around that sort of vision is critical for you right now, moving forward. Shifting a little bit, our focus from business to community investment to making it the kind of place, that long question that we asked that maybe you saw earlier about imagine it's 10 years. I'm going to get there. I'm flipping too much here. Imagine it's 10 years from now. You meet someone on the street. What do you hope they would say? Often the response to that was, this is a place where my family can stay. We have the amenities here. We have what my children need, not only in terms of education, but in terms of jobs and amenities and beauty, something that will attract them to stay here. So balancing that economic and community development, and then focusing on community investment. And then, of course, a commitment to land, culture, and belonging here in Prineville, and then more widely in Crook County. So our growth and future vision opportunities. Define and share that clear, inspiring vision. Define and share it in an inspiring way. Really important. Strengthen the city-county collaboration and alignment. This is a theme that emerged regularly. Sometimes when there are two governments that are active, sometimes they work well together, sometimes they find themselves crossways. More deliberate intentionality around that would be great and is a good opportunity for you. Engage the community with why, not just the outcomes. Tell the reasons. Here's a story. Tell this story and draw people into that story. Show visible progress with all of that. Highlight that. And then redefine Prineville's identity. Not just negatively, over against all those people over in Central Oregon, but positively. This is who we are. We're not just not them. This is our vision and our future. Okay, you?
So with that, we can open it up for questions if anybody has questions from the council.
Questions? Yes, tell us about the educational component that you interacted with or heard as a component of the community. Or was that a factor?
Could you share that, ask that again, the education component that we heard? Okay.
Anything about education in your conversations?
Yeah.
We did interview folks associated with the educational system. It was, and every time we asked about that aspect of Prineville, it was very positively elaborated on. I know there have been some struggles in the past. We didn't dive too deeply into that. We talked about where we are now and where focused a little bit more on future vision. So there wasn't anything excessively negative that came out of those conversations. Yes, sir.
Adding to our president, how about healthcare? What was the mention there?
I'll let you do it. I'll let you take that one too.
So healthcare is a concern for the community because of the population, primarily because of the population that's moving in to the city. So having access to those services here and not having to travel as much is a concern and a desire. So there wasn't. We interviewed. I'm sorry, I've forgotten the gentleman's name that we interviewed at the hospital. You know who I'm talking about, right?
That doesn't matter the name.
Okay. We interviewed him and he was very positive about his relationship with the city and very optimistic about the future regarding those sorts of provisions for medical care. That's about as far as we went on that.
I'll tag one more on.
Okay.
Regional transportation, not just in Prineville, but in Central Oregon.
I don't think we covered that topic. It didn't come up.
Keep in mind, this was more our leadership specific, the things that we can control.
Yeah.
Here directly from the city, not so much what the school's doing or CET or something like that. We really wanted to look at some things we could do. Doesn't mean we can't pull those people in. I think Carmen and made the point that, you know, more community collaborative work with the other governmental bodies that Jason spoke about is some of the things that came out of their work. And we've been relatively successful in that, as we all have talked about in the past. But I think what they're suggesting is building upon those successes that we've had with our collaboration with OID. We've had a lot of collaborative work in concert with the county. And that has, you know, paid dividends as well. I think what they're also suggesting is, you know, not letting the foot off the gas, and especially with the county, our biggest partner, our most important partner is the county. We know that, and to really continue to work on strengthening those relationships and finding those opportunities between the two organizations. So those are some of the things that I think over time, you know, a little bit of complacency can set in, and we take a few things for granted. I think we took some communication assumptions for granted earlier on with some of our other endeavors. And what I found as your city manager is it kind of brought us back to some of those fundamentals. You know, I always use the example, if you're coaching a basketball team and you can't make free throws, you better practice free throws. And so even though we can sit here and say, well, we put lots of articles in the paper and we had public meetings, well, what else could we have done that we didn't do for whatever reason that may have made a difference? And I think what my takeaway, and I believe my team's takeaway, is never enough. We got to just keep working that, refining that, and becoming better communicators, better educators. When you first asked that question, Mr. Council President, I thought you were talking about how we educate others. And that was something that really truly came out of their work, is we have to become good communicators, but within that communication, we have to be educating at the same time. So that's really what I would say is the the value proposition from Amplified Life is kind of bringing us back to some of those fundamentals that maybe over time we were not as sharp on as we could be.
Where I was really looking for, or what I was really looking for was collaboration opportunities and where we have or could have made a difference.
And that's something that I wanted to add. It became very clear that the community is really looking for an organization or someone to step up more in a leadership role in that collaborative way. And everybody was willing to come to the table and collaborate. And when we asked, well, who should be in that leadership position, naturally they would answer, well, it should be the city. We would like to hear more of that from the city. And so what Steve was just saying and what we really believe out of this opportunity to be here is more visionary communication. Collaborative leadership is really what's needed in order to move things forward. Because that will bring the community engagement, which is the piece that we're all really wanting more of.
Questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hello. Kelsey Haskett. I do have a new identity since the last time I was before you guys, so still adjusting to that, and you will have to too, I'm sure. But Prineville Crook County Director with EDCO. So before Steve shares some updates on the dumpster fire that is Oregon economic conditions from OBI later in the meeting, wanted to share a couple of good news things specific to Prineville economy. So as you've heard in the past, we've had the third highest average annual wage in Crook County due to all of the industry diversification since the Great Recession with data centers, professional services, construction, manufacturing, secondary wood products, all of those things. So we're actually at number 2 for all the counties in Oregon for average wages in the entire state now. Only $400 behind Washington County for annual wages. Before it was Washington, Multnomah, Crook County, and now it's Washington, Crook slightly below. So that is great news for our area. We can continue to grow wages and industry diversification here. So it's made a huge difference just with the recession, the pandemic, all of those things, makes us more stable through any of the uncertainties with the economy kind of being uncertain at this point in time with a lot of the federal changes, state elections coming up, things like that. So good news for our area, at least. We're doing the best we can with what resources and conditions we've been given. And then second, Steve asked if I would come share a little bit about the Lexington manufacturing acquisition here in Prineville. So as you guys are aware, Owens Corning decided to close their doors earlier, spring, early summer of this year. We had a career fair in August with the Business Response Network. So that's a collaboration of workforce, partners, leadership, education, economic development, and about 20-ish employees from around the region attended that, and about 40 people that we're aware of got jobs from that effort. Obviously, that's not near the number that were laid off because of that closure. They closed with 184 employees, which even the year before that, they were up 240, 250. So significant loss of jobs, staple in the community for many decades. So the timing worked out perfectly where that happened. And then a couple months later, it was the parent company to Lexington Manufacturing, which is Watkins Associated Industries. They are a family portfolio of companies. They're based out of Georgia. And then Lexington itself is headquartered in Minnesota. They have a couple locations there, and they've been doing some recent geographic expansion in the US. So Indiana, and I'm blanking on the other location. And then it was kind of a perfect opportunity. They looked at buying the equipment at the Prineville facility from Owens Corning once they became aware of their plans. And then after doing some more digging, they decided that they just wanted to take over the whole facility. They had employees that had planned to work through November, so they kept 50-ish on, and they're actually there currently and already getting kind of trained to get up and running. So they have those people, they have all the equipment ready to go. They'll be utilizing that full facility, which is about 600,000 square feet. And their growth trajectory for employment is pretty steep. So while they announce 50, that will probably grow quickly as they get settled in the community. So be back up at those previous numbers prior to the closure. And they're also working with the governor's office on a potential support system for some of that workforce. So no local incentives for this one based on the type of project and it being basically ready for them to move in and get going. But they will get some non-local money, which is great, to help facilitate some of those hires as they get further along in the next few months. That process takes a bit longer than their plan to get up and running. So their goal is end of this year, which is now, and they're making that happen so far. And I'm sure we will all learn more as they get up and running, but happy to take any questions to the degree that I know them. And the reason that it has been more quiet is because there was an NDA for this project through the state. So everyone kind of found out all at once. Any questions?
No questions, but that's a story, the wage, where we rank in the state. That's something that we need to get out there and figure out how we get that out to the community. That's just magnificent.
It is.
And for reference, I guess I didn't share. So the current average wage for Crook County is $89,930. So pretty big deal for this area. And we have a slightly lower cost of living than some of the neighboring areas. So that gives people more quality of life here. And to your point, with economic development and community development being a balance, just opportunities for them to use their purchasing power in the community in new ways as that gets fleshed out.
Mr. Council President, unless you have any questions for Kelsey, I have something to kind of add to that.
I have no questions.
Anybody have any
Anyone else?
questions? So, two things. First and foremost, Lexington came here. I'm familiar with that organization. Didn't do any business directly with them, but indirectly did. They're not unlike Endura. They're well ran, well respected in the industry. I don't think it's a mistake that they came here to buy equipment and ended up deciding to do business here. I think that speaks a little bit of volume to the environment that we've all created here, Kelsey as well. And then lastly, earlier today, I got word that Brightwood Corporation has sold their businesses to Anderson Window Company. Anderson, I'm very familiar with that organization and have a relationship with the ownership of Brightwood. And their company has been very heavily engaged with supplying Anderson wood window and door components for many, many years. And I view this as a good thing, providing tremendous stability with Anderson as the parent for those manufacturing organizations, and more importantly for us, the jobs associated with that. Keep in mind that the old cut stock plant out in La Manta is also being utilized by Brightwood. So we don't know what that means. We don't know if Anderson's going to change up anything. They do have their interim CEO is in there working with Dallas Stovall and his uncle Tim to make this transition go. But I view the fact that now we have Anderson Window Company actually in Prineville in a satellite plant, but also in Central Oregon is a tremendous opportunity for employment long-term with great benefits, family wage jobs. So I view that as a very positive move. Congratulations to the Stovall family for making that transition the way they have. So.
Any other questions? All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Next, under council business, we have Mr. Kaiser. Spending our.
Good evening, council. For the record, Casey Kaiser, City of Prineville Public Works Director and Assistant City Manager. I'm up here at this time tonight to ask council to consider approving the intent to award for the design contract for our water and wastewater extension project. So this is the project that ultimately would extend water and wastewater services to those underserved areas within the city and within the urban growth boundary. So some time ago, council identified this as a high priority for the city to provide services to those currently underserved areas. So there's about 330 homes inside the city limits that don't have water or don't have access to connect to city water services, and about 210 homes inside city limits that don't have access to wastewater services or sanitary sewer services. In addition to that, there's about 250 more homes just immediately adjacent to the city limits and within the urban growth boundary that also are high density, small lot development that don't have city water or wastewater services. So this is problematic for a number of reasons and a high priority project primarily because of the health and human safety issues associated with the close proximity of wells and septic systems in those areas. And a lot of those wells and septic systems were put in a number of years ago when building codes were different and requirements were different. So one thing that happens now in certain cases where those systems fail, those private systems fail, is in some cases the properties face condemnation because they can't reestablish those or reconstruct those systems. And I see I see several council members nodding their heads and who have a good understanding of that process and that dynamic that's happening there. But also providing city services to those areas really opens up the door to redevelopment. And some of those areas are quite depressed and suffer from some of the lower property values there. And having these services helps pave the way for redevelopment and then also infill in some of those lots there. So just real quick, I wanted to show council a couple of the areas, well, where the majority of these homes are inside the city limits is up around this Sea Hale area up here. Most of those houses in that neighborhood don't have city water services. There is wastewater to a portion of that area. And then the Crestview neighborhood is another one. And then just north of the fairgrounds down here off of Lynn Boulevard, there's a pretty large section of the city that is not served with city water. And then immediately adjacent to the city and within the urban growth boundary is we have this subdivision out the Madras Highway up here is currently not served. But the big area is this Willowdale and Melrose area down here. So just to give council kind of an idea geographically where those homes lay. So the exciting thing about this is that Caroline Irvin, the city's director of strategy and economic development, was successful in securing some congressionally directed spending dollars for the city that's allowing us to move forward with this design process. So one other thing I'd like to mention is one thing that your team here at the city has been very successful at is getting funding and getting these large-scale public works projects completed. And part of the reason is because we've established a little bit of a blueprint for success with these projects, which is that we kind of fight, scratch, and claw our way into the funding to get the design done and try to create what's considered a shovel-ready project. And this is where a lot of municipalities and a lot of governments really are challenged, is getting that design portion done. Because what we found is once we get this design portion done, we have a much greater ability to succeed in getting funding for the construction of these projects. So again, this is a pretty exciting opportunity for us that we've secured funding to design this project. At the end of this, we'll have a shovel-ready project that we'll be able to start seeking funding for the construction. So we utilized an RFP process for this. That was a requirement of the funder for this was to use an RFP process to select our design contractor. Ultimately, there were 4 qualified proposers that submitted proposals to us for the project. That was Anderson Perry and Associates, Parametrics, AKS Engineering and Forestry, and Keller Associates. We had 3 reviewers that reviewed all 4 of those proposals and scored them according to a matrix that was established. The highest score was awarded to Anderson Perry and Associates. Now, one question that came up prior to this was there weren't bid costs associated with each of those proposals. So how the RFP process works is we select a contractor based on their qualifications, their experience, a number of different criteria. Then we establish a budget for the project. And so once we've selected a contractor, then we work with that contractor and within that budget to complete the project. So we've established a budget of $900,000 for this. The funding that Caroline secured was $1 million. We determined that we would need about $100,000 of that to cover some other miscellaneous administrative costs associated with it. And then the $900,000 will go to this contractor for it. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but my recommendation would be for council to approve the intent to award to Anderson Perry and Associates for the design for the water and wastewater extension project.
Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Have we used any of these four outfits before?
Oh, yes.
We have we have some experience with all of them. We've worked with all of them on different projects in the past. Anderson Perry and Associates is probably the one. Anderson Perry and Associates and Parametrics are probably the ones that council will be most familiar with. Parametrics did our transportation system plan. Anderson Perry did our water system master plan and our wastewater facilities plan and does quite a bit of work for the city related to our wastewater treatment plant.
Perfect.
Casey, I don't know if you can talk about the condemnation on some of the properties, but is that within the city mostly, or is it within the county mostly? Or is it an equal distribution?
I couldn't say whether it's an equal distribution or not, but it is in some of both.
But this is specifically for the engineering design that the work is to be done.
That is correct. And just to Councilwoman Hutchinson's question, to we will prioritize those homes within the city with this design effort. And so the idea is we'll start with that. And then to the degree that resources allow it, we'll extend out further from there. So it's anticipated that we'll have enough within the project budget to cover the infrastructure for all of those, but we will prioritize those homes within the city.
And then subsequent to this, that completion will go out for, you will attempt to get funds for construction, but construction has nothing to do with our present conversation.
That is correct. Yes, this phase of the project will get us to the point where we have a shovel-ready project that we can go out and seek funding for the construction for. I'm highly confident that we'll be successful at some point in that endeavor.
Thank you. Other questions?
Casey, I appreciate what you said about having things shovel ready, because that is very important to get funding where a lot of other communities do not have that ability to do that.
Yeah,
Thanks.
very much so. Thank you.
And when we get to that point, I hope that we have some contributions for those homes that while they get services to them, they don't have the resources for the hookup. So,
Yeah.
but that's again down the road. Questions from anyone? Is there a motion?
I will move to approve the intent to award authorizing the design contract with Anderson Perry and Associates for the design of the water wastewater infrastructure expansion project in the amount of $900,000.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Again, any questions? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carried.
Thank you, council.
Pleasure. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Moving along to staff reports and requests, Mr. Forrester, city manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. Again, always starting off with our safety team and the PD and the dispatch. According to our gang, the Christmas parade was a success. Had city, county, and state officers on hand to assist. We also have a new officer starting in a couple weeks and is slated to attend the academy in January. So we're able to get those officers into the DPSSD school more quickly than we were several months ago when we had quite a waiting line. Interim Chief Wilson applied for a grant that, if successful, will provide his team members the men and women out on the streets with drug detecting equipment that can identify what types of drugs they're dealing with. This is really important because the systems we use now is where we have to kind of handle the drugs. Of course, we have personal protective service items, gloves, goggles, and such to protect them, but they have to actually handle it. This technology would eliminate a lot of that risk. So we're hopeful that we can get that done. We're also wrapping up some annual DPSST training requirements, which have been met or exceeded. Our police department is also actively working drug cases. And the reason we bring this up and why this is important is, as you know, after COVID, we were pretty shorthanded for a long time. So our PD folks and our dispatch folks were more reactive than proactive. And we're happy to report to council that we are manned and our FTE count is up enough where we can actually have enough bench strength to go out and do some proactive detective work and get ahead of the game. I think the recent media release on the gentleman that was caught in Harney County really was born out of the work that our team did here and got that person identified, and the chase that ensued ended up being terminated in Harney County. But that was really a large part of the work of Shane and his team to get that person identified and then eventually into custody. On the dispatch side, we've conducted interviews with 5 call taker applicants last week with hopes to have someone on board by the end of February. It continues to be a challenge to get Katie up to speed on her FTE count, but she's making headway. She's very innovative and making progress each and every day. On the public works side, the big news is Jason Wood, one of our longtime employees who's been managing water treatment plant and the Barnes Butte Recreation Area, has accepted a position as the City of La Pine's Public Works Director. So we're going to be losing our buddy Jason. We wish him the best in his new journey, and I'm sure we'll see him around, but that's a pretty big change. We're already backfilling and working with our teams to make sure we don't miss a step, because as you know, we have a lot of technicalities out there in terms of testing our wastewater and for contaminants and such. So no concerns there. Casey's got and his team have that covered. And the other big news I think is really important is the winter aquifer injection process for ASR is running smoothly. As you know, we had some concerns about the quantity and capacities of those systems and had a concerted effort over the last 18 months to bring those numbers up. We have accomplished that. So what's that mean? Well, what it means at the end of the day, come summertime, we should have about a year's worth of water and storage up at the aquifer we charge. And that is an amazing piece of information, an amazing position for this city to be in, to have a year's worth of water on hand. Railroad might have some changes in the barley activity. I don't think it's going to be significant, but that's been such a blessing for us to keep our freight car and our railroad business healthy. Might see a little bit of a decline, but so far it's remained steady. And that's really a function of just the market right now is a little bit soft on beer consumption. So as the market goes, so does our ability to bring in barley and process it. So anyway, other than that, things are good out the railroad. Meadow Lakes, with the November weather being so mild, fantastic month for Zach and his team out at Meadow Lakes. He wanted me to share with the community and the council that 2025 golf or 2026 or golf certificates are now on sale, and the annual golf holiday sale at the Pro Shop will be held December 13th. So that's coming right up. On the airport, we had the ability to spend some time with Kelly, and remember, we have transferred the airport back to management underneath Cook County, but we still have a connection there with Kelly and underwriting that operation from the city's perspective. So the T-Hanger project has been completed. So this is a county-owned or airport-owned T-Hanger that will provide a revenue stream to shore up the airport operations. It can house 10 airplanes, and if you recall, in previous council meetings, we've informed the council that they're pretty much full up there. So about every hangar, occupancy was, maybe 1 or 2 hangars available at any given time. And even people that came to Prineville to visit with private airplanes couldn't find a place to hangar, so they had to just park them outside. So Kelly's real confident this is going to be a good thing for operations at the Cook County Airport. On the planning side, the planning commission will be considering a zone change this month for Grocery Bandit to do an expansion. And then next year, planning department is expecting several code updates and also we'll be doing a housing analysis for our community. Another little update on downtown side, the old Horseshoe Tavern that's been around since Jerry was a kid is going to be rebranded as the Cadillac Bar. And Tanner Brown is going to do a significant upgrade to that portion of the history of Crook County and Prineville as it relates to places to go have an adult beverage. On the human resource side, Carrie remains busy with recruitment efforts across various departments for vacancies and retirements. We mentioned last meeting that longtime 39-year employee Robbie Katzenberger will be leaving us at the end of the year and moving on in retirement. On the finance, utility payment process is coming in-house. We're not going to use a lockbox anymore. We're ready to bring that in. This will speed up the payment process by not doing the lockbox and doing it here inside City Hall. And then Lori's been working, of course, on the audit process. We did receive our audit letter today. A lot of changes to GASB accounting rules for municipalities, governmental accounting. But I'm happy to report there was nothing substantive for us. It was a good, clean report. And the council will be receiving that information from the audit team in the next few weeks. We'd like to get it wrapped up and submitted to the state by the end of the year, which is always the case. Next thing up, our public relations, kind of a check-in, and on Facebook, followers have increased, continue to increase. Just last month, 1.2% increase in hits on our Facebook page, or 1.2%, which is more than our population, I should say. And then our views on our Facebook page posts are up 17.4%. So we've got a lot of folks that are paying attention through social media on what's happening at the city. Economic Development and Strategic Services, Caroline's World, the Railroad Chrissy Grant, which we've been talking about. That's a $2 million grant with a match. It has been obligated officially, and Caroline is reporting that she hopes that by the end of the year we'll have those funds. Matt is ready to go with deploying those funds and continuing to make sure our infrastructure, the railroad's solid and updated. And then finally, the fire department concluded its fire prevention month in October. We invite Russ to come to our Wednesday meetings, and he reported that, and it was a success working with all our students at the schools. That concludes my report. Are there any questions?
I have one.
Sure.
No, I don't think this.
With the additional revenue that the T-hanger will generate, historically, the city has contributed to along with the county, to the airport. Will we be continuing that contribution, or will there be enough revenue from the hangar?
I can't say that we won't ever have to contribute again. There is a time, end to our agreement. Lori, have we been contributing? Do you want to speak to that? Yeah, thank you.
Lori Hooper Antrim, City Finance Director, for the record. We have not been giving the county money.
Yeah.
We have an intergovernmental agreement right now where we do contribute, but it's not anything where it has been, and that agreement should be expiring within 3 years.
Yeah. Our contributions are more specific to the arrangement with Kelly. That they have been anyway.
That's exactly
So,
right. We
and remember,
have personnel services.
Council agreed to hold him harmless as we transition the management from the city to the county. He's actually a contract employee now, but we're transitioning away from that as well. I think we have another 2 to 3 years on that, Lori, something of that
3
nature.
years.
Yeah.
But with the leases that they're generating and the activities up there, they are at this fuel sales, they are able to cover their own expenses.
They have been, Steve. Again, we are obligated through the agreement in the event that they go upside down, so to speak, or cash flow doesn't meet expenses. But so far, knock on wood, it's been pretty solid, hasn't it, Lori?
Yeah, and they also have an FBO that's managing all of that. And
Yeah.
they have a contract with an external FBO that's dealing with all of that.
And that's very good news.
Yeah.
Yes.
Self-sufficient.
Correct.
Well, I think that's another, back to some of the earlier points in tonight's meeting, is that collaborative effort. Steve, of course, you actually were the one that initiated that way back when, but you know, we really have transformed the operation up there. And then, of course, we got Kelly on board and we got some employees up there. And then we got the Hello Base that we collaborated with county on and got that started. We got a number of grants that Lori managed when we had management responsibilities. And, you know, where we're at today is there's 3 FBOs up there. As Lori brought to our attention, you know, we have one of those FBOs handles all the fuel sales now, which was all done in-house. And, you know, Kelly's managing a group of hangars and airport infrastructure as opposed to day-to-day operations. So what a transition over the last 10 or 15 years. So.
Great, good news. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or concerns? Nope. Are there any council reports?
So Steve, I think there's one more report there in the staff request, that
I apologize.
number 7.
Oh. There
So
you go.
that's me again. I'd like to ask Casey to come up and join me at the podium. I have a report to present to council. Ready? Could you run the
Peter Van White.
Yeah. So just before we get into the slide deck here, I'm not trying to, for those of us who've been around, I'm not trying to outdo, I don't do these very often, but I'm not trying to upstage Eric Klon's for length of time of a presentation, but we do have quite a few slides. And I want to preface by saying these are just facts. I don't want this to be any other messaging on Kelsey called a dumpster fire at the state, but in all honesty, the true meaning that I want to get across to the public and the council is this is the environment that we have right now. And these are just facts that have come from Oregon Business, come from ITR, Institute of Research, that we all use. Marv, you used that when you were banking and that service. And so with that being said, let's get started. So if we go to the first, this is for those of us who have some banking experience, these are kind of the trend in short-term rates. So you can see that there's been about 125 basis points of decrease in short-term borrowing rates from the Federal Reserve over the last 12 months or so. So kind of an interesting scenario, especially when we go to the next slide, which is the long-term rates. And long-term rates have not changed much, interestingly enough, over the past year. And what that really has resulted in is what we refer to as a flat yield curve. And in my experience and looking at economic information, some economists and some forecasters are saying that means a bearish market, and then some of them are saying it means a bull market. So it's really hard to predict what a flat yield curve means. That could go either way, and it's really difficult to make that prediction. So let's go to the next slide, please. But here's what we do know is inflation is pretty darn volatile. And if you follow ITR, Institute of Trends Research, they did predict correctly that we'd see, 3+% inflation rate, as we move through 2025, and they were spot on that. And there's really no signs right now that inflation is going to ease any. We know that fuel prices are good, but we got other forces against us with some of the policies of the federal government. And in fact, we just don't have any reason to think that they're going to go down anytime soon. Except what we do find in the data is rents have flattened. So people who rent their homes aren't seeing the increase like they are in other items. Now, why is that important? Well, rents make up about 30% of the inflation gauge. So when you think that through, that's a pretty big deal that rents have flattened. Let's go to the next slide, Casey. So from the stock market perspective, it's been a fantastic year. You can see there, the S&P, the NASDAQ, and the Russell 2000 all in tremendously strong numbers. But here's the situation if you analyze that and dig a little bit deeper. Primarily driven by what we call the Mag 7 stocks. The Mag 7 stocks, for those who don't know, are basically tech companies: Alphabet, Google, Amazon, Apple, Meta, Microsoft, NVIDIA, and Tesla. That's the Mag 7. So what does that mean? Well, it means that the gains in stock, although that's great for people in the stock market, your 401ks and such, but it's heavily concentrated in a specific industry. So for example, Ford Motor Company, General Motors, they're not doing so hot, and there's a lot of other ones that aren't doing very good. But these are such big companies. The ones I mentioned are so big and so powerful and such a big part of our economic base that they're driving the ship right now, and the results are fairly favorable. Next slide, please, Casey. So how does that affect us in our region? Well, this data here is obviously Bend specific, but we're all following the trend. We always have followed behind Bend. Obviously, there's been differences in markets, but I think we can all agree that the differences between Prineville's pricing for homes and Bend pricing is compressing. There's less change now, or less differentiation today than there was, say, 5-10 years ago. We see housing prices are down slightly. You can see that trend, just kind of a little tail there at the end. But the bottom line is real simple, and I'm not telling you anything anybody doesn't know, in that the average family median income, in the $80,000-$90,000 range, homes are out of reach with a $733,106 average typical home value. Even though it's down year over year and 1 year value change of 3.6%, it's still out of reach for most folks. So what mortgage lenders refer this as is kind of a new phenomenon they're calling the lock-in effect. And what that means is that's when homeowners are unwilling to give up their 3 or 4% mortgages to move on or upgrade to a bigger, fancier home, or entry-level people getting into the market. And so we're now seeing this effect, and this is kind of something I came up a little bit on my own, but I kind of see the same effect in some regards to how that impacts the labor market, that same locked-in effect. So we don't see the transitional consequences of people job hopping as much as we did, pre-COVID and then slightly after COVID, where people were jumping around a little bit. So people are holding on. Employees are holding on to their workforce. And employees are hesitant to change right now because they're uncertain. They're a little bit scared, a little bit fearful. I think that's really ran throughout there. But when you take a step back and say, well, where's the fear coming from? Why is that happening? And what's the source of that fear? I think that's when things are going to get real interesting for all of us. So let's move one more slide, Casey. And this is a really powerful slide in my opinion. So this is unemployment. So if we zero in on our home state at 5%, and you compare that, Nevada's at 5.3, California's at 5.5, but look around the rest of the country. It's not very likely you're going to see a 5. I see we got one over there in Ohio. We got a 4.7 in Virginia. Got a 3.8 in Florida. We got a 2.5 in North Dakota, 2.9 in Montana. Our neighbors to the east in Idaho, Spud Country is 3.7, Utah 3.3, Texas 4.1. So that's a little bit telling, I think, is, Oregon's unemployment is running significantly higher than the rest of the country. In Central Oregon, here in Prineville and Crook County, we're up to about 4.8, so we're not as high as the average across the state. But the bad news is we were 4.3 this time last year, so we're up a half a point. And I think that's partly why some people were running a little bit scared. I think we all have a little bit of hesitation there. The other fact is that Oregon lost 11,000 jobs last year. That's a big number. And although opinions vary, overwhelmingly, the cause of these job losses in this situation we see on the map in front of us now seem to be related to some of the situations we have as it relates to tax and regulatory climate in the state of Oregon. Next slide, please, Casey. So what happened? Well, these are some pretty hard numbers to take a look at, I think, for any of us that live in Oregon. And CNBC, top state for businesses, we rank 39th. And if you look at the chart to the right, you can see the black line just cratering since 23 and continuing to decline. Business friendliest, we're 47th out of 50. The one that hurts me the most personally is fourth grade math and reading, 48 and 46 out of 50 respectively. That's not good news. Tax competitiveness, we're number 35 out of 50. Now we're number 7 in regulatory burden, except for you don't want to be number 7 in regulatory burden. You want to be number 50, and we're number 7, so we're close to the top there. Next slide, please. So kind of in a nutshell, Oregon has the highest tax burden in almost all categories compared to our contemporaries across the United States. Now, we all know that we don't have a sales tax, and we all know that some of these states that have the stars there do. So, I think that's a differentiator. But remember, this information is all combined: the tax burden, the regulatory burden that we as Oregonians face compared to our contemporaries across the country. So it puts us in a pretty tough spot. We've got a little bit of a headwind. Let's move on to the next slide. So here's some things as it relates to why we have the highest, or one of the highest, if not the highest, tax burden. So this is an interesting slide where it's showing our per capita spending since 2006. The inflation rate applied to that almost 6,000 back in 2006 to what that value is in 2024, which is around 9,000. And then compare that gain to the $6,000 back in 2026 on per capita spending that's now jumped up to 14,000. So you can see the gain in what the state's burden is on us taxpayers has far and away outstripped the inflation rate, and what OBI, our own Oregon business entity, is saying they don't think that's sustainable, so unsustainable. So move next slide, please, Casey. So just to put an emphasis on that, it's not really a revenue problem. So you can see the biennium general fund revenue, 2023 to 2025, 2025 to 2027. Some of those are obviously estimates, but that line is trending up significantly. So it's hard to imagine. Again, this is coming from our own state analyst, Oregon Business and Industry. So we don't really have a revenue problem. Next slide, Casey. And here's the other slide that really had an impact on me. When we take a little bit of a deeper dive, this is kind of serious, and tell you why. When you dig a little bit deeper into the data specific to jobs by industry, what you see in this slide, and it takes a minute to kind of get your arms around it, is what Oregon has given up compared to our contemporaries is we're giving up traded sector jobs. And we're replacing those jobs with healthcare, education, services, and tourism jobs. And in economics, the traded sector jobs are the multiplier jobs. They're the ones that lead to more money, more jobs, more activity. And the service jobs, although extremely necessary, we have an aging demographic in some cases, and we need more healthcare jobs. So that's all good and well, but we don't like to see traded sector jobs go. So what are those traded sector jobs? They're construction, they're manufacturing, those type of jobs that are typically equated to family wage jobs. And in a nutshell, what this slide here is telling us is the state's giving up family wage jobs and replacing them with service-related jobs. Education, super important, but also service-related jobs or tourism jobs, which typically, you can make a good living in education. You can certainly make a good living in health services, but a lot of the tourism jobs and some of those service jobs, not so much. So family wage jobs, higher percentage going away, not being replaced, and growth is not replacing one-to-one with traded sector. Next slide, Casey. So this slide's just a question, so can the city of Prineville overcome the headwinds? Next slide, Casey. So this is a really interesting inflation slide, again, from ITR Economics. And let's think about this. Let's start here with the inflation question. And inflation and affordability are two words that we're talking about a lot. You see it on TV, you see it in the analysts' writings as well as TV appearances. And that's what's really keeping people up at night and kind of the hot speak of what's happening today, both in reality in terms of its impact on our economy, but also, in the political world as well. You'll hear a lot about affordability, about inflation. And one of the main points ITR and many other economists is recommending, given this situation where you can see that when government spending drops off or goes up, inflation follows. And so what's real interesting about what we're seeing now is it doesn't look like it's going to impact quite the same way it has in the past. So what the result of this is what ITR is saying is by the end of 2026, our CPI will be around 4.6%. We're a little over 3 right now, as I reported earlier. So if they are right, which they have been in the past, 4.6 is getting up there. That's way higher than what the target is for the Fed. And although nowhere near the 9% we saw in 2022, but still higher than what we see today. And what's that mean for us as a city? Well, it means our cost of providing services is not likely to go down. In fact, it's probably going to go the other way. So what ITR is saying to businesses and governments and organizations is what they refer to as future-proof your business. And so that is why Casey and I and the staff are recommending and continuing to manage very conservatively as it relates to our staffing levels. And most importantly, and you've heard this a lot from staff and myself, is continuing to strengthen our financial position. So we're in an enviable position, as you know, with some of the revenue streams we have as a result of the franchise fees. We haven't even begun to see what the impact of the tax roll-offs or roll-ons, I should say, will be at the end of 2027. But we have kept our powder dry, so to speak, and we have kept, as you recall, not too long ago when Lori gave a report, you can see the amount of money we have in our general fund. So my message in this slide and to the council and to the public is we need to be very mindful and very protective of our financial foundation so that in the event that things go a little rough in terms of the economy, in terms of unemployment, that we're in a good position to continue to provide top quality city services to this community. Next slide, please, Casey. I threw this one in here. I thought this was interesting. I think it just kind of solidifies vehicle sales are down a ton, 800,000. And I think anybody that drives by a car dealership and compares to where we were at a couple of years ago or even last year, it's amazing. They're full. Purchases of EVs are falling off. I've even been concerned about a grant that we applied for that Caroline put together to get us some EV vehicles. I'm kind of concerned that maybe there isn't going to be EV vehicles to get, although I'm sure there's an inventory of them. But I did read in the Wall Street Journal that Ford Motor Company is considering ending their EV operations, at least temporarily. Next slide, please, Stacey. So for us, what's that mean? Well, I think, in terms of our housing economy and putting together an environment for us to be successful on, I think with interest rate potentials still maybe dropping below the 6%, we saw that flat long-term yield curve. If it stays flat, maybe not, but if it drops a little bit, we could see it or those mortgage rates come down a little bit. So if that happens, a little bit of activity will probably keep those prices, flat or 1% to 2% up as we go into 2026. Next slide, please, Casey. This is another big issue that I think is going to affect our community and certainly our state is labor's fragile. We talked about that. Now, having said that, one of the phenomenons is, and Prineville's certainly a poster child for this, is the metro area in this state, the metro being the cities there listed in the secondary market, but Portland's really the metro. When we say metro, we mean Portland. They're down 3.6%. The secondary is up 2.2, and then rural, I think that's us, is we're holding our own. So it's fragile. It's iffy. It's a little bit scary. And what's really interesting is the second box. Unusual to see payroll declines outside of a recession. So the R word pops in there. Oh my gosh, maybe we're going to have a recession. Now, I'm not saying we are. I'm not saying we aren't. But it goes back to my earlier comment on financial foundation. We got to keep ahead of that and make sure that our finances remain strong. So next slide. So I'm going to turn this over to Casey in just a minute, but I have a quick closing statement. So we had a lot of information tonight that's been positive, and that's a nice and wonderful thing, but we've earned it. Not that we haven't made some mistakes along the way, we certainly have. But all in all, from the economic standpoint, with what Kelsey reported, we've got a new company coming in, filling in for a company that decided to leave. We've got a lot of good activity going. We're number 2 in the state for average median income. Those are very, very healthy signs. So this community, this county has not followed the trends of the state. And as I stated earlier tonight, we're now the second highest median income county in the state. In 2008, if you recall, for those of us around in city management at that time, our city was near the bottom of the 36 counties for median income. I think we were number 4, number 5 out of 36 counties. Jerry, you might remember, but something like that. It was bad. Today, we're one of the most successful microeconomies in the nation, and we've reported on getting that notification, that acknowledgement from several different agencies, national agencies, recognizing our economy, they call a microeconomy, as being one of the best in the state. I think we were number 8, not in the state, in the country. And if you recall back in 2010, when we first started to rebuild this economy, we were successful in bringing Meta in, and they had just begun not operations, but in construction, close to getting in operations on the first data center. This council directed this staff to focus their energies on creating family wage jobs for this community. And I want you to just pause right there. In 2010, this council directed us to focus on creating family wage jobs. We wanted to differentiate ourselves from some of the phenomena I just spoke about in previous slides, where we weren't focused on tourism. That wasn't the answer. We needed manufacturing, family wage jobs. We wanted to be the community that if you wanted to go to work, raise your family, own a home, Prineville could provide the best opportunity in our region to achieve that goal. And the metrics that we provided here tonight, and we provided previously and other opportunities here in council, indicate we've made significant progress toward that goal. So how did we do that? And how, more importantly, how do we continue to provide that environment to provide such opportunities for our citizens? And I could sit up here and talk for hours on our culture. I could talk about working at the speed of business and many other attributes that got us here. But today, right now, our challenge is different than it was in 2010. It was different than it was in 2020. And it's different than it was in 2024. And it'll be different in 2026. That's our challenge. That challenge is immense. And our ability to continue to define, adjust, and improve our processes is the key to unlock and continue that potential that we've been successful on to date. So at this time, I would like to turn this over to Casey, and he's going to outline some things we've done in the past few years, some things we're doing today, and his vision and plan for some of the things we're going to do in the future to ensure that we can build on the success we've had so far. Casey? You want me to run the clicker?
I think I got Can it.
You do both?
I think I can
Okay,
do both.
that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm a good multitasker.
I couldn't do that.
One of my few talents.
Yeah.
Good evening, council. Again, for the record, Casey Kaiser, City of Prineville Public Works Director and Assistant City Manager. So Steve asked me to take just a couple of minutes of your time tonight and share about some of the projects that we've recently completed that kind of tie into what we're doing in this environment that we have today, and then talk a little bit about what's coming up ahead. So one thing we talk a lot about around here is this idea of setting the table, right? There are things that a city can do and things that a city can't do to help create opportunities for our future. And one of the things we can do is create the environment that provides the widest variety of opportunities for the future success and economic growth of the community. And so when it comes to projects, a lot of what that looks like is how do we create the environment where these companies that offer these living wage jobs, what do we do to create the environment where their bar to entry is low and their opportunity for success is high? What are the attributes that we need to create? So as Public Works Director for the city, obviously a lot of what I focus on are those physical infrastructure projects. But going back to Steve's point, what do businesses need to succeed from an infrastructure perspective? They need water, they need power, they need wastewater infrastructure, they need access to all these things. And council's very familiar with the fact that many businesses select the environments or the cities or the municipalities that they locate in based on what things like that are available. So I wanted to just kind of recap a couple of those projects and tie it back to this idea of capacity building or setting the table. So we look at projects like our Combs Flat to Peters Road extension. That was a $14 million project that we did in combination with Ochco Irrigation District and piping a pretty significant section of open canal. And that project provided a critical transportation connection between the commercial core of the city in the south and those neighborhoods in the north. But maybe more importantly, what that project did was it built capacity for the city, and it built capacity in a number of ways. One of which was creating that major transportation connection that allowed for more development in that to the north and to the east in town. So when new subdivisions and new neighborhoods open up, they have the burden of figuring out how to create the transportation network to serve them. So we put a pretty significant piece of infrastructure in place to help facilitate that. But we also did, and this is a lesser known fact to that project, but we also put in a 16-inch water line the entire length of that road. And what that did is that not only looped in a part of our water system, but it also created more opportunities for additional development to connect to that water line. It also created the transportation connections that would allow us to do in the future aquatic center or a sports center or an event center or things like that out at Barnes Butte. So that Rimfire Road connection and that Hudspeth roundabout there. So then another project that council is very familiar with was the 30-inch waterline resiliency project that we did up in the airport industrial area. So that was about a $4 million project that constructed a water line that increased volume, fire flow capacities, and pressures in that airport industrial area. So again, how does this relate to setting the table? Well, what do many industrial uses need? What do businesses like lumber products, like Les Schwab, a lot of industries like this have higher than typical needs for fire flow capacity. So we put in a piece of infrastructure that provided that level of service for that area, that opened the door for the variety of industrial businesses that we could site in that area up there. Again, setting that table. And as council's very familiar with, we just finished production on the ASR2 well. So that well is constructed and in the ground, and we'll be setting the pump in it here shortly. But again, that not only provided resiliency and redundancy for our existing injection and recovery well for our ASR system, but that also significantly increased the capacity of our water system to the tune of about 11% increase in our production capacity. Again, a community in the West, what do we need to create the environment for business? We need that water, we need that power, we need those things. So that was about a $3.2 million project. And I might add too, just for council to reflect on, I know I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but that Combs Flat Road project was funded with ARPA funds, $14 million, partnership with OID, who also had some funding that they contributed to it. The Waterline Resiliency Project was funded through agreement with our data center partners, Apple and Meta. Funded that project. Our ASR2 well is being funded through a partnership with Meta. We did about $2 million worth of infrastructure improvements in support of multifamily housing. So again, think about what does it take to set the table? Well, in the recent announcement about Lexington locating in the Owens Corning facility up there, one of the things they cited in several of the articles that I read was one of the reasons why they cited here was the availability of a workforce that had experience in the lumber products industry. Well, if you want to maintain a workforce, you need housing. And as Steve showed in some of the slides earlier, as the costs of housing have increased here, one thing that becomes important is more diversified types of housing. So that $2 million in infrastructure that we put in has facilitated about 700 units of multifamily housing. That's workforce housing. That's where those families, those young adults can get their start in the housing market here to work in the jobs that we're creating in our community. And then even things like the Barnes Butte paved loop trail up there, that's about creating quality of life amenities that make our community more attractive for our kids to stay in when they grow up. We want them to have the option to live here and again, to be able to work those jobs that support that industry. And like Steve's fond of saying that we can't let our foot up on the gas. This isn't something that we do a little bit of and then pause. We have to keep going. And especially in light of some of the regulatory challenges that face our state and even to a lesser degree, the nation. So as we move forward, big projects, we're right now in the permitting phase of our ASR horizontal well down there. That's providing additional source capacity for that ASR system. That ASR system is is one of our greatest assets when it comes to providing water to whatever industrial development might come for the future, or whatever type of development the council and the community might choose to embrace here. The biomass power generation facility, we talked a lot about all the environmental benefits of that, the forest health, creating monetization for removing those low value fuels from the forest, those fine fuels that improve the health of our forest, but also that juniper remediation, restoring our watersheds, improving our water, our stream flows, all those things. But from a capacity building perspective, and Councilman Uffelman is very, very familiar with this and could talk for hours about the challenges that lie ahead of us with respect to power. So the ability to be able to provide locally generated baseload power would be a huge competitive benefit to the community. So we continue to push forward and look for opportunities to get that project off the ground. I'm just starting to work on a Milliken Road utility extension project that'll extend water and wastewater services out Milliken Road. That'll help pave the way for additional industrial development out to the south down Milliken Road there. And then the UGB expansion, Josh is not here tonight, but he's working on the final phases of the economic opportunity analysis. That will provide the basis for expanding our urban growth boundary. Again, tying that back to capacity. If we don't have available industrial lands within our inventory, we won't have the opportunity to grow. So that's really, really important. And there's strong feelings about that out there in the community about where that growth should happen. And those are all questions that we have to be able to answer. But in order to keep those opportunities open for the city in the future, we need to have that industrial and commercial land inventory. And then even really simple things like our annual water line improvement projects. You know, every year council approves about $750,000 worth of water line replacement projects. But every time we do one of those projects, we're looping systems, we're adding hydrants, we're adding capacity to be able to serve increased density within the city. So I appreciate taking a little bit of time tonight to talk specifically about how some of these things tie back to building the capacity for the city, and how council has been very clear about directing staff to set that table. And I think that we've been very successful at that on a number of fronts. And I think with that, my work is done here. Mr. Forrester.
I don't think we have anything to discuss further as part of the presentation, but certainly would entertain any questions that the council would. Did we just wear you down?
No, but thank you for bringing up the EOA. I was kind of curious where we were on that.
Hey, good. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great presentation.
And my apologies for jumping ahead on that.
I almost let you.
All right. Thank you. Now, any council reports?
I have one.
Yes.
So today, Ochoco Forest Restoration Collaborative made a decision to dissolve. So there will not be any more OFRC. In case you're wondering, some of the reasons is our mainstay with the Forest Service, Kevin Cowan, he retired. And so there's no one that's been following behind him that has been support for us, and then funding or tracking the funding. And then Central Oregon Forest Stewardship Foundation, they have been our financial person for paying the bills and taking care of everything. And they've been unreliable to us also. And so we've had difficulties to receive updated financials. We still don't have. And then the membership is not the same as what it used to be. We struggle with membership. We don't have the environmental community, and it's like a handful of people that are, we're keeping OFRC alive. And it was just time to say enough's enough. So that's what we did today. So that's the end of my report.
Sorry to hear that, and thank you for your report.
Sure.
Questions?
I have a short
Yes, ma'am.
Report. Caroline and Josh and myself, we attended a focus group at the COCC on Monday morning. And they had a baker's dozen number of questions for us to think about, talk about, and what we saw. And it started out, what's the greatest strengths of Prineville, and what are our top priorities for economic development? What kind of employers and industries are we actively trying to attract, and population, demographic groups in the community? And anyway, a pretty good bunch of questions, and they're having these focus groups at different places. And this was led by Susie Christensen and Cindy Lenhart. And I honestly don't remember exactly what their titles are, but they kept us on track, and we had a good hour's time of getting information shared by the people that were attending. So that's my report.
Thank you. Any questions or any other reports? Okay, thank you. I see we have no ordinances and we have no resolutions. We will break for an executive session, but prior to that, this is an opportunity for visitors' appearances and requests. Anyone that would like to speak to the council, please step up to the podium, identify yourself by name and address, and share your concerns. And please keep it to the 3-minute limit. Okay.
Online.
Is there anyone online who would like to speak? Oh, okay, thank you. So we will move on. City of Prineville will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192.6602E to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions, and ORS 192.6602I to evaluate the performance of an officer, employee, or staff member. Representatives of the media, of the news media, and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other persons shall be asked to leave the room and not permitted to listen in on the Zoom meetings. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of this session as previously announced. No decisions may be made in the executive session. Designated staff allowed to attend the first executive session are Steve Forrester, Casey Kaiser, Laurie Antrim Hooper, Lisa Morgan, and Jared Reed. Designated staff in the second portion of the executive session are Steve Forrester and Jared Reed. No decisions will be made in this executive session. At the end of the executive session, we will return to open session and welcome the audience back into the room and online. And we will take about a 5-minute break to get things organized. So it is, let's come back at We're on.
Get you a Butterfinger,
Okay.
you'll go all night. boy.
No, like butter.
Oh, Snickers. Uh,
Okay, let's reconvene into open session. Uh, And Mr. Forrester has provided us with some information that he feels, and I wholeheartedly support, about a compensation package. And I talked with our Mayor Beebe earlier today, back and forth, and he is very supportive of the request that has been made. Would anyone like to speak to that at all?
I have only one question. Is there a standard range of your salary program, so that is it anywhere from 2 to 7 or something like that based on performance and for the staff people, not just you?
Absolutely. So Mark, we have a comprehensive review every year that we have individual ranges, low, mid, and high point. And I've done this a long time. And then I always budget in opportunities to compensate over and above. So we might not move somebody's, we might just do a CPI, for example, or not change, but we might give somebody a bonus for outstanding work or something like that. So we also have the union agreements that have CPIs built in. So kind of as a general rule of thumb, I always budget about a 5% in the budget. And that just gives us flexibility because, we always try to cover the CPI side of things, but obviously there's variability amongst individual employees by performance or by responsibility, either responsibility is increasing or not. So yes, we adhere to those. Now, I want to be very honest with you. I'm above my range. We have one other person on the management team that's in that area. So, in my ask to you folks tonight, that this is above kind of a little bit above what the CPI you saw with the CPI. The union folks are getting 3.5%. I felt like 4 was a nice number for me, recognizing I'm highly compensated, especially for the size of community, and I would argue that we have differentiators in this community that other communities this size do not deal with. And we have a success that's enviable. And so I felt these last 2 years, given the fact that you guys have compensated me very well, that if we could just get it done, get it set forth at that 4% on my base and just leave my car allowance and everything exactly as it is, that would be very satisfactory to me from the compensation piece. But to answer your question, Marv, yeah, we have very specific guidelines.
My former is called gap analysis.
Correct.
You got someone that does 1% work, you don't give them CPI.
No.
And so
And we don't. And yeah.
One that walks on water, you give them 7.
Yeah, and you guys, and Marv, I know you haven't been there as long as some of the other members of the council, but I came to the council a long time ago and said, I want some flexibility. I want to be able to acknowledge, for example, mid-year, which I'm doing my mid-year reviews with all my reports right now this week. And there are people, let me give an example is, what do you say to a person that's brought in, one of our employees that's brought in a whole lot of external funding, that is in the tens of millions of dollars. And how do you recognize that? So the council has been very gracious over the years and providing some flexibility.
When you made them successful, they made you successful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so while we're talking compensation, I agree with your 4% effective January 2026, but not for the January 2027.
Okay.
It's, you mentioned the R word tonight, recession, and we never know what's going to happen between now and January of 2027. And it seems like whatever position I had in the future, you only evaluated for that year. You
Sure.
didn't go into the future year.
No, that's,
So,
that's true.
for me, that the future year is a no-go for me.
Okay. That's fair.
In compensation, I'm good with that. I'm also, very supportive in your proposal on the sick time.
Okay.
I was there at one time and I know, what that meant for me and all that. And in regards to the succession plan, I want you to know you have my utmost support with moving forward with your plan with Casey.
Just to comment on that, that's very important to me personally. More importantly than what it is importantly to me is to the team. It's, and my view is, we owe that to Casey. Not only that, we owe that to the rest of the team. So, uncertainty is a horrible thing. And I want to be able to look them in the eye and say, this is the plan. This is the direction that I have authorization to go as it relates to Casey. And then to you guys' point that's been made here is, then we fill in the gaps. But having that certainty that the next 2 years is very meaningful, and the team needs to understand that. I've been here a long time, as you guys know, and we need to do this right. And I think Casey is the right guy, or wouldn't be bringing this to you. And I'm very pleased that so far you guys are in agreement that we can move that direction. That's very, very helpful.
And I'd just like to say on top of that, until Jerry come on board here, I had the privilege of being the only one on the council that had worked here, retired from the city, and now sit on the council. And that uncertainty, I lived through some of that.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Whether it was city managers or the public works director going a different direction, Jerry retired and all that. And those were at times some of my darkest times here and to be quite honest with you, that uncertainty with your pending retirement sets right up there in importance to me. So I am just so happy, and I'm very confident in, and I could probably take a pretty good guess and come pretty close of those next people moving up. And I think we have some of those on staff, and a lot a lot of that's because of work that you did.
You got a great bench.
And
Yeah. Yeah, we got a great bench. Scott, you're right.
Eric Klon in the past. So.
Yeah. We have some depth on the team, and that's obviously a product of you guys' involvement as well.
Yeah, I'm very agreeable to this whole thing, and I really got a lot of respect for Steve and Casey both. I think he's done a lot of good already at training Casey, and they work well together. And I think having somebody in here that understands the city, that's been here and knows how the city's handled things in the past is very important. Where if you go and get somebody from the outside, you don't really know what you're getting. We've been there and done that. So I think, and I think Casey, I don't think Casey's reached his potential. I think he's just about like, same age as Steve was when Steve started. And look what Steve.
Well, he's older.
Is what?
He was older. He's older than I was when I started.
Uh-oh.
But Jerry, that's a great point. And what I want to reassure the council is people like Casey Kaiser don't come along very many times. People like Eric Klon don't come along very often. Caroline, Lori Hooper, Zach Lambert, Matt Wiederholt. We are truly blessed with a very, very strong group of people that are very passionate about this city. And that's rare. I know it's rare. I've been around long enough to know that just doesn't happen very many times. And
But a lot of that
Casey's,
relates to
Kate,
you.
well, I appreciate that, but,
Reverts back to
and
you.
I'll take a little credit there and I appreciate that, but, Casey's gonna be a better city manager than I was. That's my prediction. Cause and the reason I say that is it's gonna be different. And it has to be different. It can't stay the same, and Casey's the next gen that will make those adjustments correctly. And that's what we want. That's what I want. So. And I'm not so sure who's training who. Sometimes I learn. I think I'm sharing but I'm learning a lot from Casey. Smart guy.
Yeah, it all looks good to me, and I want to thank you for your passion and appreciation to the transition that we're facing. I can tell that it's not taken lightly, and the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, and everything's going to transition smooth.
Thank you, Shane. I appreciate that. It's real important.
For the compensation, I agree with it. And I understand, Janet, where you're coming from. But there were a couple of years where I felt we did not adequately compensate Steve where we should have. We should have compensated him more, and therefore I feel we're a little behind the ball in that respect. And for that reason, I would push to include the 4% for the following year, even though I understand where you're coming from, but that's my position on it. I feel that it is fair, it is earned, and I would support that compensation package, particularly with the sick time. Went through some of that, and it's from a taxing standpoint, and from an assurity standpoint, moving things forward, it's a cleaner way to go for him. Doesn't change the amount that we're going to pay. We just split it up in a different fashion. And so I think that is a fair and equitable way. As far as succession plan, boy, I don't know. I just don't know about that. Now, that's a decision the council will have to formally and officially take down the road. I think it is a good plan moving forward. I see no reason why it shouldn't move forward as it's laid out. But
there's work to be done, but the bottom line, what I'm asking for here is just an acknowledgement for the council that I'm on the right path, and that's your heir. Casey's our heir apparent, and he will be in line. And Steve, that's really meaningful, and I know. I just can't tell you how strongly I feel about Casey's competency to be a great city manager. Unbelievable.
So I'm going to make the motion.
Wait just a
Go
second.
ahead.
Janet, go ahead.
So the sick time, I'm okay with that, the
Oh,
way you
thank you.
spelled it out.
Thank you.
That looks great to me.
Sorry if I jumped in.
Well, I thought we were gonna do one at a time like we did the last
Oh,
time, so that's where I stopped.
Okay.
And then the secession plan, I think it's great with Casey. I think it's great that you've been working with him.
Yeah.
And you'll continue to work with him
Right.
for another year.
2 years,
then-
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
For some time.
Yeah.
You're considering to work with him. And then he'll have a month that he'll start working
Mhm.
with your direction, but being the manager in
Yeah.
December. I like that. So that way, I mean, he's gonna have things pop up that he's not gonna know how to deal with it after you leave. And so my next question is, are you also considering being under contract with the city to assist Casey, kind of like what you did for the police chief when we had a new police chief?
Well,
If that's something that you're considering or you're not because you're working so
Right.
long with Casey.
I think that would be up to Casey. So the short question is, that's a possibility. I would not turn my back on that no matter what the situation was, but that will be up to Casey. And I think from my perspective, you know, that's not a council decision. That would be more of your city manager's position at that time, whether he wanted to bring me on. But to answer your question, certainly, I think, you know, Jerry, we brought Jerry back. We've used Scott. You know, that's not unusual. So, and you know, how I feel about the city. So if Casey needs me to consult or support, that's certainly a possibility.
But that would be a future decision to be made.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, exactly.
But I fully support Casey.
Yeah.
I think he's great.
That's the main thing.
Yeah.
So the question is, do we want to take these in portions or as a lump sum?
I would do them in portions, actually. You have two motions on the table. The third one isn't really a decision. It was more of a consensus because it's, no offense to Casey, but that decision can't be made until months, even perhaps years down the road. This is just for acknowledgement to actually put some effort into that potentiality.
Continue that effort.
Yeah. So it really, the only motions are 1 and 2. So the compensation package, and then you would do the sick time.
Okay, we will do the compensation first.
Mr. President, I would move to approve the city manager's proposal for compensation package effective January 21st, 2026 through the year 2027.
Counselor Smith, I would actually suggest a motion to approve an increase of the city manager's salary by 4% effective January 2026, and then another 4% on effective January 1st, 2027, if that was the motion you were trying to make.
So moved?
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Questions, discussion? And not everybody necessarily will support that, but that's quite all right. I would like to call for the question. All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed?
Well, just, we're recording. We don't have our city
Okay.
manager here, so we would want to do some aye votes and nays on that.
So we have approval from Counselor
Just for the record, yeah.
from Counselor Smith, from Counselor Howard, and from Counselor Brummer, and from myself, Steve. And we have one opposed, Counselor Hutchison. All right,
Before we
the
vote,
motion passes.
before you vote on sick time, I'd like to note that in the corporation that I work for, your dedication, the fact you showed up every day and you built up sick time, you didn't get any benefit of that later on. So no matter how hard you worked, no matter how good a job you did, sick time, as far as they were concerned, was meaningless. And I don't think that's right. So, you know.
Well, that's not uncommon, Marv, unfortunately, but thankfully, you know, yes, this is very meaningful to me, and very meaningful for a lot of employees that have left the city, Jerry and many, many other people. So again, kind of back to the premise of, you know, why do we have good people here? Because we take care of them. So I appreciate it.
So the motion on the first compensation component passes. And number 2 is sick time.
I'll move to approve the sick time according to what Steve wrote, which is 47,000, being compensated $47,000 this year, 47,000 for next calendar year, and the final amount being paid out at either the end of 2027 or 2028.
Second.
Been moved and seconded.
I just want to clarify one thing. Was that also pursuant to a deferred comp catch-up plan? Because that's actually how it logistically works, these periodic installment payouts.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That's okay with the second?
Yes.
All right. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have a unanimous approval of the motion. So. Hmm?
We need to verbally do it.
They did. Everyone said aye.
Everyone did said aye and it's unanimous. So everyone who has, all of the council members present said yes. So it is a unanimous.
You all just said it.
All right.
So this all goes to Steve?
Yeah.
Right.
Great. Give it all your executive session stuff back to me would be great.
Yep. Back, yeah, that's, Jared can be the custodian at this point.
Lisa.
Yep.
One more motion to entertain.
I'll move to adjourn the meeting.
There a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.
Same.
Bed